Daniel Barone, MD, physician, and author. Welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here, Matt. Thank you for having me. Very excited.
You're very welcome. So, what's the deal with sleep?
Yeah, sleep. Let's get right into it. So sleep, what I usually tell people, both my patients and the public, is think of it this way. I like to look at things from a evolutionary perspective, right? So if we look back to our ancestors from tens of thousands of years ago, if they when they slept, right, think of the caveman, let's say, or primitive man. When they slept, right, they put themselves at very, very high risk of being eaten by a grizzly bear or a tiger or something, right? So there must be something so important going on with sleep, or evolution would have weeded it out of us. It would have said, okay, you only sleep 1 hour or half an hour and that's all you need. But it's not. If you think back to primitive time, that's not the case. And that's carried through. Our need for sleep has basically carried through all the way to modern day. The average person needs between 7 to 9 hours. Now, of course, in this society, we don't all get that, but that's kind of where things are.
Mhm. Never
Yeah.
heard that's pretty fascinating angle. Never thought of it that way. Going ways back, and we've it's been part of through evolution. It's become even more necessary, right? Because way back then, it was like grab a couple hours here or there but they were always worried
That's
about survival, right? Worried about making it through that day or that night, right? So what do you think the
right.
reason is for like over time to now? To have this need, and I guess it's because of this ability to adapt and this ability to get stronger, and I guess the Darwinism part. So, what's kind of led, do you think, to us needing more sleep or desiring more sleep to be most effective?
Well, it's not that we need more sleep. I mean, we probably need as much sleep as our ancestors did. It's probably the human condition, as it were, is probably like 7 to 9 hours.
Okay.
That's like the average person.
Okay.
Now, of course, there's a bell curve, right? Michael Jordan sleeps 3 hours a night per, you know, various stories you hear, and then other people sleep much longer. And there are people who most people fall within the middle range there, 7 to 9 hours. But
Okay.
what tends to happen is it's not that we need more sleep. It's that given all the electronic devices that we're exposed to, all of the work that we have to do, all of the social obligations, all of these things,
Mhm.
puts it so that way sleep becomes kind of secondary. Okay,
Mhm.
and we're not as um, you know we sleep now compared to 100 years ago 1 hour less, which doesn't
Mhm.
sound like a lot, but that makes a huge difference when it comes to health and it comes to mental health and it comes to just being able to function. And I think that that's honestly getting worse because we have access. People have computers in their bed, they have TVs in their bed, they have video games in their bed, and all that stuff. What it does is it kind of tells the brain you shouldn't be asleep right now, and
Mhm.
that, of course, has consequences the next day and long term.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So I'm thinking about even just the definition of sleep because somebody could
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I got 6 hours of sleep last night," right? But you might even say, "Well, hold on a second. Okay, well, is that even sleep? How do we define the quality of the sleep?
Right.
That could be used loosely, right? Maybe they took medication to fall to sleep, and it's not true restful sleep, right? It's so like I guess what's your kind of your bar when we say that hey that fits the bill of sleep versus that's
Yeah.
not even in the it's a misnomer.
That's a great question. Sleep really is defined kind of what we call electrographically. So, what I mean by that is by having electrodes on your scalp, that's really the only way someone can say, okay, this person's in sleep or deep sleep or light sleep. There's a lot of different, wearable technology these days that people have on their wrist or whatever, or wear on their finger, and it purportedly has this ability to tell you if you're in deep sleep or light sleep.
Mhm.
I don't know how real that is, frankly.
Mhm.
Really, what those devices do is they kind of just tell you if you're moving a lot, you're either awake or in light sleep. If you're moving a little, you're in deeper sleep, and that's kind of the benchmark of it. Real, true sleep, deep, having deep sleep and REM sleep, and these different stages of sleep that the brain needs. that really is predicated on having healthy habits and taking care of any sleep disorders that may be, playing a role, which is where my job comes into play.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So with those stages, so of course I've heard of REM sleep, right? I've heard of that, but I'm not that familiar. So what are these stages in
Sure.
of the
Yeah.
night sleep? Yeah.
So basically, you have wakefulness, which we understand, right? And then you have non-REM sleep and then REM sleep. Okay, those are the three stages of consciousness, let's call them.
Okay.
So REM, let's start there. That's rapid eye movement sleep. And why it's named that is because essentially during REM sleep, your body is entirely paralyzed. Okay, the only things that really move are your diaphragm, so you continue to breathe, of course,
Mhm.
and your eye muscles. Okay, so the eye muscles, it's kind of creepy to do this, but if you watch somebody sleep and their eyes are darting back and forth, they're probably in REM. Okay,
Mhm.
so the body's paralyzed except for the eyes, and they're breathing. Why that happens is because in REM is when we dream.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's kind of known as dream sleep. So, nature, God, whatever, in their genius has decided that we should not be moving during dream sleep, right? It makes sense. If somebody is dreaming about, running away or fighting somebody off and they're actually do those things, that could be dangerous for the
Mhm.
person and for their bed partner. So we're totally paralyzed during REM sleep. During these dreams, we think one of the theories is that the brain is actually what we call pruning. So it's kind of keeping things that it deems important, memories that it keeps important, and getting rid of stuff that's not important.
Mhm.
Okay. So, for example, what I had for breakfast, not really that important, that probably will be siphoned off. Whereas, my appointment that I have tomorrow, that probably will be locked in.
Mhm.
Okay. And we think REM sleep is has a big part in doing that.
Okay.
Okay. And we spend about 20 to 25% of our night there, okay, in REM sleep. And what happens is about every 90 minutes or so, we have a period of REM. So you may have heard people say we have 90-minute sleep cycles.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what that means, is that we have periods of non-REM, we end with a period of REM,
Mhm.
and then our sleep becomes lighter or we wake up, and then another cycle begins.
Mhm.
That's what sleep cycles mean.
Okay.
Okay, so that's REM sleep, that's REM sleep. The naming is not very creative, but non-REM sleep or non-rapid eye movement sleep is the rest. Okay, so that's the other 70, 75%, 80%. And that's basically, you can dream. People do dream sometimes during non-REM sleep, but they're not necessarily things that we remember. That sleep is much more defined as kind of the body resting.
Mhm.
Okay, things like growth hormone gets released during non-REM sleep.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you want to think of it kind of in a very simple terms, non-REM is kind of for the body, REM sleep is more for the mind.
Mhm. Okay.
You know.
And what about the sequence throughout a night? Is there a certain kind of like normal order that these happen? It sounds so REM sleep is usually a certain percentage. Did you say like 25 to 30? Did I hear that right? 25 to
Yeah,
30?
about 20-25% of our night is in
Right.
REM sleep. Yeah.
So, but is there like a typical sequence where you kind of toggle
Sure.
from REM to non-REM and so on?
Yeah. So typically, again, this is where the term sleep cycles come from.
Hmm.
If you put everything together, the sleep architecture, basically what that is that you have these periods of non-REM, which kind of get deeper as the night goes along. Then you have a period of REM. Then there's either an awakening or light sleep, and then another cycle begins again, where non-REM, 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 REM, another awakening or a light sleep, and then another cycle begins, non-REM, blah blah blah, all the way through the night.
Okay. Okay.
That's usually how it goes.
Okay. And is it a
Yeah.
wives' tale or a fallacy that if you wake up during a dream that's going to affect your next day of your lucidity during the next day or just your clarity during the next day if you wake up during a dream and then can't fall back asleep or even if it's in the morning?
Yeah.
Is that
Well, that's a good point. It's not a wives' tale. It's actually reality.
okay?
The kind of the normal circumstance is after 4 or 5 of these cycles, our brain is awake and we're ready for the day, right? So typically, the kind of the textbook scenario is after your last REM period, you tend to wake up. Okay, so people waking up out of a dream is actually the textbook. I mean, we're saying textbook, but that doesn't always happen in real life, right? But the textbook kind of scenario is you have all these cycles and have a last period of REM, your terminal awakening, and then you wake up and you're good for the day. Waking up out of non-REM sleep, when you're in the deeper forms of non-REM sleep, that can actually really impact how you feel the next day. Typically what happens is, I don't know how technical you want me to get here, but non-REM sleep has different stages in itself. So we have non-REM stage 1, which is very, very light sleep. That's the kind of sleep you'd get if you fell asleep on a subway, for example. Not very refreshing. Mm-hmm. Non-REM stage 2, that's kind of the baseline of our sleep. That's where we spend most of our time. And then non-REM stage 3, that's very, very, very deep sleep. Okay. And again, nature, God, whatever has put geniusly has put it so that way we have our really deep non-REM stage 3 in the first half of the night, not so much in the second half. The reason being is because if you wake up out of M3 sleep, it can feel like you've been hit by a truck. And we've all experienced this before. If you have ever taken a long nap in the afternoon, like an hour, 2-hour nap or so, and you wake up and you feel worse than you did before, chances are you were probably in M3 sleep, woke up out of that, and your brain has what's called sleep inertia, which is like, I just want to go back to sleep. I don't feel good right now. I don't feel refreshed. I feel worse than I did before. Mm-hmm. That is not the normal circumstance.
Okay. Really interesting. Just sticking with me that this hasn't been weeded out over time, right? Whether it's higher power, God, nature, evolution, that this has not been weeded out for a reason.
No,
so it's
that's right.
And then also heard what I heard was kind of maybe like a 1-2 scenario, like a 1-2 punch, where people will put like the non-sleep stuff in their life is very important, and sleep takes a back seat, right? So, and somebody talk to me about that. Do you see that? Do you think that sleep should be prioritized or for health? And because that does seem to be all right. I could get I could get this amount of sleep tonight, but it's not like a true sleep hygiene or true sleep plan. It's more of like, all right, like I have time to sleep now, but it's a backseat to everything else.
Right. So, one of my passions, aside from my day-to-day taking care of my patients, is public education. I think it's very, very important for people to understand about sleep health. Okay. And my book's back here, The Story of Sleep, and from A to ZZZ. And Let's Talk About Sleep. This one here is the Korean version of Let's Talk About Sleep, which is why it's over here. Mm-hmm. So it's published in Korea. Go figure. But my whole thing is I want people to understand, at minimum, sleep health should be a priority. Okay, and what I mean by that is avoiding screens half an hour before bed at minimum. Right? We're so focused on watching Netflix or whatever right up until bedtime. And look, if you have no trouble sleeping, then have at it. But if you do suffer from any problems, falling asleep or staying asleep, that's a real easy thing to fix. Instead of watching these screens and stuff a half an hour before bed, better to just read on paper or listen to a podcast, maybe this one, right? Or listen to music or meditate or pray or whatever it is you like to do to kind of quiet the brain down without looking at a screen. These are the things that anybody can do, and it can make a big difference.
Okay. So what are other things like that are very like pragmatic, very kind of simple? That I can do that, right? I can shut down 30 minutes sooner or an hour sooner, get away from those screens, meditate, or even read. I've heard that reading, like even reading like a fiction book, can be helpful, like a physical fiction book can help put you to sleep, something like that.
Yeah.
The screen.
I mean, I don't really have a specific, recommendation on the type of book. What I would say though is you don't want it to be something that's going to excite you, where I can't wait to see the next page. I mean, that's obviously going to be a little counterproductive. But if it's something that maybe a little technical or boring, that could be good. Just something to kind of quiet the mind down. The important thing though is that whatever you do, really try to avoid screens. Okay, the reason being is because screens, whether they be a TV, a computer, an iPhone, they emit what we call blue light. You probably have heard that term before. It's, all the rage these days. Blue light is a very specific frequency. And what it does is it tells our brain that the sun is out right now. So therefore, we should not be making melatonin. Okay,
Mhm.
melatonin is a hormone that the brain makes. It tells us it's time to go to sleep.
Mhm.
So if we're leading up to our sleep period, and instead of allowing darkness to set in and our brain to make melatonin, we're inundating it with this blue light,
Mhm.
it's going to work against what we want to do.
Mhm.
So that's the whole purpose of this.
Okay, so it's almost that the brain is a bit tricked into thinking that it's light out, the sun's out,
That's
because
right.
this blue light from the phone or the screen is present. So the brain is not fully making
Exactly.
that connection about what time of day it is, basically, or if the
Yeah,
sun's out or not.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. And look, you may be so tired that you're able to overcome that, but you want to kind of stack the cards in your favor, which is where other things besides screens can be useful.
Okay. And maybe a little, sometimes overused or maybe even outdated word, but these hacks they're called, right? These hacks, these kind of simple things to do that will. So, for instance, the screen, so that could be a tip or a hack. Like, what's another thing that's kind of tried and true, kind of can't go wrong? Hey, do this, and we're
Sure.
going to get a little
Sure.
deeper into maybe the science of it, but in terms of just the pragmatism,
Right.
like don't have screens in
Sure.
front of you. What else is kind of a simple kind of tip right out of
Right.
the gate? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things. So one is, you want to be consistent, right? So people sometimes, on the weekends they'll sleep in, and that's fine, to some degree. But you don't want to sleep in so much or so late that it makes it harder to get to sleep that night, especially Sunday. Like, going from Saturday night into Sunday, if you sleep in on Sunday till 11, 12, it's going to be very hard at nighttime to get back to sleep. When it's time for you to sleep Sunday night, and
Mhm.
that can kind of perpetuate a problem, right? So you're not sleeping enough going into Monday, and then you're tired throughout the week, and then you end up sleeping in. And it just becomes this vicious cycle. So being consistent is probably one of the easiest things.
Mhm.
Within an hour or so. If you want to sleep in an hour extra on the weekend, fine. That's one. Number two, I would say, is napping, right? So something like you come home from work, long day, you have your dinner, you lie down on the couch, you're watching some TV, and you end up falling asleep for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It seems like an innocuous thing, but what happens is when it's now time to go to sleep at nighttime, 3 or 4 hours later, your brain may say, "Well, look, I just took a nap, so therefore, I have no drive to fall asleep now," and
Mhm.
that can also cause problems. So,
Mhm.
napping usually is okay if it's done earlier in the day
Mhm.
and kind of on the shorter side. Okay,
Okay.
you want to avoid those evening naps.
Okay.
And then lastly, I would say, or not lastly, but next I would say is exercise. Regular exercise, especially in the morning. What I usually tell my patients is let's try to get into the habit of exercising in the morning. Nothing crazy, 15, 20 minutes, some cardio,
Mhm.
exercise in the morning. And then at nighttime, like we just spoke about, that last half an hour or so, use that for meditation or other relaxation techniques. That
Mhm.
combination tends to work well for people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then lastly, I would say substances. So the big three that I call them, that's caffeine, alcohol, and nicotine.
Mhm.
Nicotine, I mean, we should be smoking anyway, but nicotine is a stimulant, right? So if you have it too close to bedtime, that can cause people to be stimulated and have trouble falling asleep. Caffeine can stay in our system much longer than we think.
Mhm.
And even if you have something decaf, unless it says caffeine free, even decaf has a little bit of caffeine. And
Mhm.
that closer to bedtime, even probably in the early evening, can keep you awake too.
Mhm.
And then alcohol can help us to actually fall asleep, but it causes our sleep to become much more disrupted. So it's not a good substance to have when it comes to sleep.
Okay. On the napping one, so
So those,
what's a general cutoff time with napping where hey that's too late in the day to take a nap? Like what's a
yeah,
general
right, right.
cutoff for that?
Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend is you want to avoid late afternoon, early evening. That period of time I find is the most problematic for people
Okay.
because, like I said, the way our brain falls asleep is we have this sleep drive, which is built up over the course of a day. If you do a nap, a half an hour nap or so, you're kind of releasing the pressure. And then that way at nighttime, when you really do want to fall asleep, your brain doesn't have that same drive that it would otherwise.
Okay.
So probably early, like I said, late afternoon, early evening, no
Okay.
naps.
And
Yeah.
when that does happen and getting late afternoon, early evening, and getting sleepy, it's like, oh, it'd be nice to close my eyes here and take a nap. What's a way to fend that off?
Yeah, I mean, probably going for a walk,
Mhm,
getting a little bit of physical activity. That'd probably be the way to do it. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're saying every day,
mhm.
I'm dog tired, because that could be the sign that, okay, I need more sleep at nighttime, or there could be something else going on, like sleep apnea, for example.
Okay. And I heard maybe 7 to 9 hours. I heard
Mhm.
consistency, and it didn't come up today yet, but I've heard in the past like the phrase circadian rhythm. So like, what's like
Right.
they tell me about that because consistency, 7 to 9 circadian rhythm, and obviously everybody's a little bit different, but what's kind of the
Sure.
optimal? What's kind of like the textbook, for
Yeah.
lack of a word, optimal metrics around that?
Right. So what I always tell people is, good sleep is quality,
Mhm,
quantity, but also timing.
mhm,
Okay, so quality, right? We kind of just talked about that. We have to have the different stages of sleep, and that can be affected by underlying conditions like sleep apnea.
mhm,
So that's quality. Quantity, we just mentioned 7 to 9 hours, the average person, right? But then timing, and that's where circadian rhythm comes into play.
mhm,
So our circadian rhythm, basically what that term means is it's our body's internal clock. It's our clock that's set by nature that we can't really adjust.
mhm,
And typically, a person's normal circadian rhythm says, I should be asleep, 11, 12, somewhere in there, 10, somewhere in there. And I should be awake 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. Okay. That's the body's normal circadian rhythm.
mhm,
That becomes an issue if somebody works overnight, let's say, for example, or like when I was a resident, we would do 24-hour, 30-hour shifts, right?
mhm,
What happens in those cases is when you go to sleep in the morning, let's say, your circadian rhythm is off.
mhm,
Okay. And your brain is saying, okay, I'm tired. I definitely want to sleep. However, I'm kind of fighting against my own nature, which is my brain is telling me to be awake right now. You
mhm,
see? So people who work overnight shifts, a lot of times their sleep is very, very poor. We call it shift work disorder
mhm,
because their circadian rhythm is out of whack with what they're able to do for
mhm.
work wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
That leads into exactly what I was about to ask about these, we'll call them disorders or these like
Mhm.
sleep apnea, I heard, right? So sleep apnea is one, but then there's this shift, was it shift work disorder? Was that what it was
Shift
called?
work disorder. That's
Shi-
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are others that are in this where we're talking about like a real kind of functional problem? Because it's one thing if somebody is kind of winging it and they're just a little tired versus actually having something
Sure.
that's a condition. So what are these conditions
Right.
that or these
Right.
disorders that exist?
Yeah. There's probably 30 different sleep disorders, but
Mm,
the big ones, let's call them
mm,
sleep apnea, number one. And what is that? That is a condition where essentially your breathing stops throughout the night. Okay. Think of it this way.
mm,
When we're awake, our brain is telling our muscles to stay where they are, right? So the tongue, everything is where it's supposed to be. Okay. And the airway back here, the airspace where the tongue sits, that's wide open.
mhm,
When we fall asleep, though, what happens is our muscles relax, right? We know that head to toe, muscles relax.
mhm,
And what can happen is in some people, the tongue can relax so much
mhm,
that the airspace back here gets kind of compromised.
mhm,
Okay. So instead of it being this, it's gone to this.
mhm,
When you get to this, the airspace back here, okay, when you get to this, you're still able to breathe in and out, but everything kind of vibrates back there because you have a smaller space.
mhm,
That's what snoring is. It's just a tighter airway.
mhm,
Okay. Now, snoring by itself is not going to hurt somebody. It,
mhm,
it may annoy the bed partner. They may want to hurt them, but it's not going to hurt them. Okay.
mhm,
What can happen though is the next down the line. So awake, asleep, snoring, sleep apnea.
mhm,
Okay. So sleep apnea happens. The airway has gone from tight to closed off.
mhm,
The tongue falls backwards, closes off the airway.
mhm,
When that happens, the person doesn't just die or choke to death. But the brain recognizes something is wrong here. And what does it do? It yanks them out of sleep, right?
mhm,
So they're fully awake, or they go from deep sleep to a light sleep, or they
mhm,
get pulled out of REM, all the things we just talked about.
mhm,
And that, over the course of a night, can really chop up the sleep and make it less restful. Okay, so they may be tired the next day.
mhm,
But with sleep apnea specifically, over time,
Hmm.
years and decades, it can affect the heart and the brain and lead to heart attacks and strokes down the road.
Hmm. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
what's the cause of that?
that's the biggest one.
Okay, that's the biggest one. So sorry.
Weight, right? Weight is probably number one. Number two is probably genetics. You know, a lot of people will have family members who have very similar things, and you know, even thin people can have sleep apnea because the way their airway is kind of just designed. You know, so what I always tell people, I mean, if there's one takeaway from this, it's this: if you snore, or if your sleep is disrupted, or if you're even a little bit concerned, go get a sleep test. You know,
Mhm.
these sleep tests these days, they're home studies. They're very easy. They're very convenient. They can be done in one night, and they can tell you if there's a problem or not.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so sleep apnea, and it sounds like there's like maybe 30 of these, right? What's another kind of common one that you deal with a lot?
Yeah, the other biggest one, which is probably even more common, is insomnia, right? And that's defined as difficulty getting to sleep, difficulty staying asleep, or sleep that's non-refreshing.
Mhm.
And you know what's one of the biggest causes of insomnia is sleep apnea, right? Because you know your sleep can become very disrupted and chopped up and low quality.
Mhm.
So insomnia, that's a little bit different. I mean, we've all experienced that before, right? You know, you have a big test the next day or whatever, you can't get to sleep, okay, because your mind is racing.
Mhm.
But there are other causes. You know, insomnia can be definitely be tied back to psychiatric things like anxiety and depression for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, and I oftentimes with my patients, I'll either work with their psychiatrist or advise them to get a psychiatrist or a therapist. Okay, because these things do really kind of go hand in hand.
Mhm.
All right. But outside of that, you know, some people just really have trouble shutting their brain off, even if they don't have clinical depression or clinical anxiety. And that's where medications come into play, good sleep habits, that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay.
So insomnia and sleep apnea are by far the two biggest.
By
And
far.
then there's other things that are a little bit less common, like narcolepsy, for example. You know,
Mhm.
narcolepsy is you probably heard about before is
Mhm.
you know the way they portray it in TV and movies is you know you talk to someone they just pass out in front of you.
Mhm.
That can happen, but in reality, it's a little bit more subtle, which is you know the person is just excessively sleepy throughout the daytime,
Mhm.
and they may be falling asleep in class, they may be falling asleep at work, they may be falling asleep behind the wheel of a car, you know,
Mhm.
God forbid.
Mhm.
And no matter what these people do, you know, outside of medication, which you know they come to me for, no matter what they do, they can't kind of get out from behind the eight ball. They're always tired.
Mhm.
And that's definitely something that we can take care of, but you know, got to diagnose it first.
Okay. I feel like in this day and age, there's probably a lot of self-diagnosing that people do where they
Oh
go,
yeah,
for a while it was WebMD, now I'm sure it's ChatGPT
right.
or whatever else. But I guess I'm thinking about, you said like Michael Jordan, and I would love to talk a little bit
Mhm.
basketball today too,
Yes.
but MJ, right? So but other a US president, right? Or a CEO of a major corporation. You hear these people
Right,
that can, I don't know if it's called hypomania, but there's a world where they can exist in a world where they sleep
right,
4 hours a night, right? So
right,
at what point, but there's other, or an artist, right? Or whatever else, where they just keep weird hours, but that's how they live, right? But
right,
when people are struggling with, hey, do I have a problem? Do I have a disorder, right? Do I have a
right,
condition?
right.
Well, talk about that other group of people, like kind of
Yes.
the Jordans of the world or the
Yeah.
Trumps of the world, who
Yeah.
you hear they sleep like almost never, right? Or a few
Right.
hours of sleep a night. Almost going back to that evolutionary from like
Sure.
they don't sleep very
Yeah.
much at all. So
Yeah.
what about those people? And like when's like the kind of threshold where somebody needs to talk to you because they do have a problem, right?
Right. Right. Good question. So a caveat with that, I will say this. You know, I think Michael Jordan is I think his stories are legitimate because they have been corroborated by teammates and coaches. So I think you know other people though when they say I only get 4 hours a night or 5 hours a night, some of that may be a little bit blustering. I don't know, you know, the reality of how true some of these things are.
Okay.
But what I'll say is there are people, we call them short sleepers, who truly, truly, truly need less than 5 hours a night. And I'm not talking they can exist. I mean, I did it in college, I did it in med school. I can power through on no sleep if I have to, because I'm running on you know will and caffeine. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about people who really get only 4 hours a night, and the difference is they feel great. They have no problems the next day. They're able to function. They don't need to take naps. They're no trouble with driving. The only problem those people may face is family members may say, "Oh, you need more sleep," or WebMD, as you said, may say you need more sleep. Sure, I mean, you can look things up and drive yourself nuts, but if a person gets only such and such hours of sleep, and they don't have a sleep disorder like sleep apnea, and they feel great, that just may be who they are. There are some people who are, on the shorter end of the bell curve, and God bless. But I think majority of people do not fall in that category.
Okay.
Yeah.
And interesting terms I'm learning today, like the term the sleep drive I heard, and now
Right.
like short sleepers. These are really kind
Right.
of terms I've never heard before, right?
Right.
And so what's other lingo that can kind of summarize certain things in
Mhm.
this field? Those are a couple of really interesting ones that kind of capture it and are memorable. That is a short sleeper, or someone your
Right.
sleep drive, and your sleep drive diminishes when you take a late afternoon nap, right? Or
That's
a
right.
nap,
That's right.
and
Very
you don't
good.
have the drive to sleep at night. What are some other cool like terms or
Yeah.
lingo that are out there in the sleep
Well,
world?
the corollary to short sleepers is there's long sleepers, right? There are people who need
I feel
10
like this is
hours.
I feel like this is a
Yeah.
Seinfeld episode. What are they,
Right,
close
right, right, right.
talkers,
Long
close
sleepers, long
talkers.
sleepers.
All
Exactly.
right, so long
Yeah,
sleepers. Tell
no,
me about long sleepers.
yeah, those are people kind of just what it sounds like. They are people who and that can be kind of more classified as a disorder, right? Because if somebody truly needs 12 hours of sleep to function,
Mhm,
that can be tough. That can be tough, especially if they have to work and have kids or whatever. So in those cases, sometimes what we'll do is we'll give them medication to help them be a little bit more awake in the daytime. Because getting 12 hours a night, that's hard to do.
okay,
But like I said, there are people on that bell curve who are on that level.
okay,
Um, so those are probably long sleeper. Um, other terms you might find interesting. So there are people who have what's called delayed and advanced sleep phase disorder. Okay, and what these are, so we mentioned circadian rhythm before, right? Circadian rhythm is our body's internal clock telling us, okay, I should be asleep now, I should be awake now.
mhm,
People who have advanced sleep phase disorder, these tend to be older people,
mhm,
what their body clock is telling them is, okay, it's 6 p.m., time to go to sleep. Okay,
mhm,
and wake up at 2 a.m. Okay. If they're not bothered by that, that's great. That's not a problem. Okay. But if they want to have a social life and interact with their friends and families, that's probably hard to do.
mhm,
Okay. And there's ways to kind of help that along with medication and behavioral treatment.
mhm,
On the other hand, you have delayed sleep phase. And what that is, that tends to exist in teenagers a lot
mhm,
or younger people, where their body's internal clock is saying 3 a.m., I should be falling asleep and I should be waking up at 11.
mhm,
Okay. Again, if you have a job or a life circumstance where that's allowed, these
mhm,
people are fine. But because society is usually 9 to 5 or so, it becomes very, very hard. And they get misdiagnosed as having insomnia, which
mhm.
they're not. They don't have any trouble falling asleep if they go to bed at their real time. But unfortunately, their real time is not conducive with a 9 to 5 job or school.
Okay. What's a
Yeah.
common medication or two that are out there just in
Mhm.
general? What are common sleep medications?
Right. For these cases specifically, or just
Just in
in general?
general, because I've heard, like, again, I'm such an amateur, right? But if I'm not a novice, I've heard of, like, back in the day, it was Ambien. I don't know if that's still around,
Right.
right? Or people
Sure.
say take
Yeah.
melatonin, or you get these things that are said, or just, but what are like some of the common for whether it's for sleep apnea, narcolepsy, insomnia, whatever it might be, or somebody just needs a little sleep aid just to fall asleep
Sure.
because they have anxiety, whatever it might be. What's
Right.
out there? Of course, I'm not recommending. I know
Yeah. No,
with
this is
every
not. Yeah, this is
caveat.
not a
This
comment
is
to.
just talking
Yeah.
shop about what's going on in the industry
Sure.
and in the profession.
Right. Well, there's different ways.
Mhm,
There's so many different classes of medication that individualized thing, right? Ambien does still exist, and medications like Ambien still exist.
mhm,
And what these medications do is they essentially just knock the brain out. That's the best way to put it. They just knock the brain out.
mhm,
So if somebody's having trouble, whether it be from anxiety or sleep apnea or pain or whatever, they just take this pill. They kind of sleep through it. Now it's not that simple, of course, And Ambien is not a medication I prescribe quite often because I think there's unfortunate downstream effects that can happen. So, there's a data showing that people who take Ambien regularly may have memory problems, short term and long term.
Mhm.
So Ambien is really just kind of as a band-aid. Some of my patients will use it here and there. That's probably fine. But as a nightly aid, I do not recommend it.
Mhm.
Okay. But medications like that do exist.
Mhm.
Other medications out there that different ways of doing it are certain antidepressants. Things like trazodone. People may have heard about before.
Mhm.
Trazodone is by far my most prescribed medication because
Mhm.
what that does is it's a sleep aid, right? So it actually helps the brain fall asleep, but its antidepressant properties, it kind of quiets the brain down, okay, which is what a lot of people need. Instead of the person, ruminating and thinking about, what I have to do tomorrow, what happened today, this kind of quiets that a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's a good medication. It's not addictive. It may interact with certain other medications. So you have to be careful, but that's my preference.
Okay.
Then you have over the counter stuff, things like over the counter melatonin, which I take myself personally, both immediate release and time release. Okay. So if somebody has trouble falling asleep, but they're able to stay asleep throughout the night, something like immediate release melatonin, a few milligrams, can be all that they need. If somebody has trouble staying asleep, and they don't have sleep apnea, for example, um, melatonin time release can be very, very useful.
Mhm.
Okay. Things like magnesium over the counter, that can be useful to just quiet the brain down a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay, so like I said, we could talk for hours about the different types of medications, but I think it's important to know that they're basically for every person's problem. There is an approach that any sleep person who's worth their salt should have in their kind of armamentarium.
Okay. What about
Yep.
Klonopin? I've heard about that one being used because
Right.
Klonopin also is one of
Yeah.
them. Yeah. Okay.
So Klonopin is not really a sleep aid. That is an anti-anxiety medication. Okay, it's used for sleep by psychiatrists sometimes because it just, like I said, it quiets the brain down, it relaxes anxiety. The problem with Klonopin, though, is that there's risks of addiction down the road. It can be, increasing doses are needed sometimes. It can make things like sleep apnea worse.
Mhm.
So in certain people, it's needed, and certain people will take it chronically, but it really has to be kind of watched closely, in my opinion.
Okay. So, in past podcast episodes, what's this is kind
Yeah.
of evolving into is learning about different professions and career tracks and trades
Sure.
and
Sure.
so we've had an accountant on, right? We've had a marketing professional, we've had personal trainers. So, like, we'd love to learn about your journey
Sure.
in terms of for people who want to maybe
Mhm.
follow in your footsteps, have an interest in becoming a doctor or have a specialty in
Sure.
sleep medicine. So, tell me your story about how you eventually made this decision
Yeah.
to become
Yeah.
a doctor and to specialize. I would love to hear all about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I guess we'll talk about college later on because you knew me during those times. But I went through Fordham University with you,
Mhm.
and I was a biology major, and I kind of had an inkling that I wanted to do medicine just because I've always kind of had a passion of helping people, and science was always something I was very interested in, and kind of the nice melding of the two.
Mhm.
So that's kind of I already had that in the back of my mind. But then once I went to medical school in New York Medical College, um, I was there. I went through all my studying and all the proper steps you take in college to get there. A lot of studying, a lot of long nights, a lot of sacrifices. But you get to where you got to be, and then in medical school, that's kind of really where you hone in. Okay, I'm here. What kind of doctor do I want to be? And I had no idea at that time. So I kind of just let my interests and passion guide me there. And I always found myself very interested in the brain and, anything brain related, how the brain works, what can go wrong with it, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I just ended up falling in love with neurology, the field of neurology, which is what I am by trade.
Mhm.
So, you go through medical school, you experience different fields, surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics, so and so. And neurology was always something that my brain kind of kept coming back to
Mhm.
as maybe I could do this as a career.
Mhm.
And the more kind of rotations and things, exposure I had in it, the more I kind of fell in love with it. So it's like, okay, this is for me. So
Mhm.
at that point, then you kind of apply for what's called residency, which is where you work at a hospital. You're still training, but you're a physician at this point. You're a physician in training. We call it a resident,
Mhm.
and you're kind of learning the trade. Okay, so that's another. So we got college is 4 years, medical school is 4 years, and then your training is another 4 years. Okay,
Mhm.
so all my neurology training. So I get through that, and the decision then becomes, okay, do you want to just become a general neurologist and go into the workforce and do that as your career, and that'll be great, or do you want to subspecialize into something a little bit further?
Mhm.
And again, I had no idea what I wanted to do, no clue.
Mhm.
Um, and one day in my training, we had this guy come by and give a talk. He was a sleep specialist and a neurologist,
Mhm.
and he was this really odd guy. He was eating dry cereal as he was lecturing to us, but I'll never forget that. But
Mhm.
anyway, he gave this fascinating talk on sleep disorders.
Mhm.
And after it was over, I went up to him. I said, Doc, is this kind of what you do as a career? He goes, oh yeah, I manage sleep disorder patients. My neurology practice is all sleep based. I was like, wow, I had no idea this was even a field. I had no clue.
Mhm.
So then, the theme here is I just kind of followed my passion. I
Mhm.
said, this is really interesting to me. The
Mhm.
more I read it, the more I wanted to learn about it. I was fascinated with the science, and I was like, wow, this can really help these patients.
Mhm.
And the more I learned about it, the more minutia I read. I was like, this is for me.
Mhm.
So I started doing rotations in that and kind of getting exposure to that. Applied and got a fellowship position, which is another year of training in
Mhm.
sleep disorders in Stony Brook out in Long Island.
Mhm.
I did that for a year. My love got cemented even further,
Mhm.
and then from there it was kind of time to look for a job. And all while this is going on, you're studying for the board exams. You may have heard the term board certified
Mhm.
physician. So I
Mhm.
had to do my neurology boards and then my sleep medicine boards. So I'm double boarded. And then I found a job at Weill Cornell in Manhattan, New York Presbyterian, and I was there for about 14 years
Mhm.
until about a month or two ago. I just recently switched jobs to Montefiore in the
Mhm.
Bronx, which is where I'm at now, and very happy.
Mhm.
So that's kind of been my journey throughout the
Mhm.
whole thing.
Very cool how you followed your interests and your passions and of helping people, but also what you find to be fascinating work, right? And what really
Yeah,
it kind of that light bulb kind of went off, right? Where it's like, yes, this is what I want to do.
right,
As even a specialty within neurology, right? And before that's
right.
really
I was
interesting.
kind of, I was kind of, I was getting a little nervous. I'm like, what? Yeah, I was getting nervous. I was like, what do I want to do? When I grow up, what is what is the path for me? And
Yeah,
thankfully, I was kind
yeah.
of exposed to things that piqued my interest.
Yeah, and dry cereal guy. I mean, sounds like it was almost like a transfer of enthusiasm. Like he loved what he did, and you kind of felt that, right? And the
It
fact
was
he had his journey, you're like, oh, look at this.
right.
This is really interesting.
That's
And
right.
okay,
That's right.
so
That's right.
again, we have some probably some parents listening to this who are advising their children as they go to college what to major in and how to progress. So the major was
Right.
biology, right? But then it's 4 years at Fordham,
That's right.
right? But then to get into medical
Mhm.
school, is
That's
it the
right.
MCATs? Is that the right? Is it the am I right? Is it the
That's
exam to
right.
get into
So,
medical
so
school?
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, we're going back 20 years now. So things may be a little bit different as far as what's kind of looked at. But typically the thing is like your grades.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you remember, you always saw me in the library, right? So the grades, your MCAT score, and
Mhm.
then, other indicators of interest. So meaning like, are you volunteering in a hospital? Do
Mhm.
you do any kind of, scientific work? Are you doing anything that kind of shows that you are somebody who is serious about your interest in medicine?
Mhm.
So those three things are key.
Okay. And somebody might be
So,
listening or thinking about this, and something goes through my mind as well when you talk about that those quantity of years, right? We're looking at
mhm,
4 years undergrad,
right,
we're looking at 4 years medical school, then even 4 years residency, and then and
right,
even board said, well, so somebody might say, man, that sounds interesting, but I can't, that's too many years, right? That's too much work
right,
and too much of an
right,
investment. So
right,
but for you, I could see your passion, your enthusiasm, and you're actively helping people on a day-to-day basis, and in terms of
right.
treating them, but also writing books. So, like, what do you say to that person who's like, I don't know if that's going to be worth it financially, but also just and
Right.
it's tough, tough, tough work, right? To be in a library,
Yeah.
to going through the minutia, right? So, what do you say to that person who has their concern about the years and the investments to get to the point where you're at?
I would tell them I understand. I understand the concerns. I understand. As you said, we even talk about the financial part, right? The loans and stuff. Um, what I would tell somebody, and this kind of holds true, I think, for anything you do in life. And I'll tell this to my son when the time is right. Whatever you do, I think it's unbelievably important to have a passion for it, because if you don't, I remember very clearly, like it was yesterday. This sounds like a cliche story, but it's the truth. I remember when we got to medical school, it was like, everybody, or excuse me, when I got to college, everybody was like, I'm going to go to medical school. I'm going to, I'm going to be a doctor. Cut to 3 years later, maybe one of those people was still around, because it's, you have to have, I think, the drive and the desire, especially with medicine, given the fact that there is so much time commitment that goes a long way. But I think it's one of those things where you'll know you're in the right spot, because you look at it and say, shit, this is really hard. This is really hard, but I know I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Mhm.
Okay. I think if you have even an inkling of that, this is where I'm supposed to be,
Mhm.
you're on the right path.
Like that.
So
So let's talk a little
yeah,
Fordham University.
it's the best. Right.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I was gonna say let's
No, I
talk a
was gonna
little.
say that's kind of the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
The best advice I can give is, and sadly, you really can't know sometimes unless you're in it, right? But I think it's important to really go out, and if you are interested in medicine, go shadow a doctor, go volunteer at a hospital, so you can kind of get a sense of what it's all about,
Mhm.
because you really want to make sure that you're kind of, you're in it for the right reasons, and you're in it to for the long haul. And if you're not, that's totally cool. That's great. I know a lot of people who started off wanting to go to medicine, and they went to something else and they're very happy. So, but I think having that kind of that experience, I think is super, super important.
Okay. So let's talk a little Fordham University. We could talk about, like you said, exercise is really important to, to
Yep.
sleep hygiene, which was, basketball goes into that,
Right.
calls into that category of exercise. So we'd love to talk about that a little bit. But before I get to that, my memories from college, and this is going back to this 1996 to 2000 time frame for me. And I guess you were there
Right.
97 to
97
01.
to 01. Right.
No, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
we're same time, same general time frame. But my stereotype of biology majors and pre-med, where you all didn't sleep. I remember I always felt
Yeah.
like I felt you guys, there was a crew that I thought you guys were nuts. Like where you guys
Yeah.
were always at the library. There were always like study groups and like, dorms. Well, tell me I'm wrong, but you guys are like workhorses who didn't sleep. It was almost like, oh, but it almost became like a culture where it was like a competition of who could sleep the less,
Yeah.
but the least. But tell me I'm wrong, but that's the way I remember some of that
That
crew.
is 1 billion% accurate. And the joke of it is, my friends always laugh about this, because it's like, I was not sleeping. How could I ever tell anybody about sleep? But I would not recommend what I did as the path to take. There's better ways to do things. But I still am just so competitive that I didn't want anything to kind of have, or anybody to have any kind of thing over me, whether that be, who could work the hardest, who got the best grades. That's where, which is sick, I realize. But that's kind of what drove me. We actually, I don't know if you knew this. We actually played a couple of JV basketball games. I was probably on no sleep. Probably I was a handful of games. I was on no sleep whatsoever. because I'd studied the night before for a test. So
Wow. So am
yeah.
I on the right track with my novice as I'm learning today as a novice? Were you a short sleeper? Or was that
No, I actually truly studying myself, I probably need a good 7 hours, I would say,
okay?
is
Okay.
legitimately what I need. But if your fuel is burning for other reasons, I can get by,
Yeah. Okay.
on
So
6.
even though you needed the seven, you weren't getting the seven in college, right?
No, no.
I remember that. I
Again,
do
I'm not
remember.
recommending this. This is not a
No,
this
no.
do what I say, not what I do type of thing,
Got it, got
but
it.
what I
And
did.
but operating on 7 hours, you feel like you're more productive than you
Mm.
would on less, right? In terms of
Sure,
your
sure.
productivity,
Yep,
ability to serve
yep,
patients. Yeah, but,
yep.
all right. So I'm not wrong. So I was 1 billion% right about that crew. That
Yes,
crew. I was like,
yes.
man, these guys don't sleep. It's like a it's almost like who could sleep the league. So if
Right,
you're
right.
competitive, it's
It
like
was
I'll
part of
sleep less than you.
right.
I'll study more
Yep.
than you. I'll be at the library. But
Yep.
but also that work ethic, and I mean, we had a lot of fun. So fill in some blank. We could fill each other some blanks with memories here. So we played JV basketball. I played for a couple of
Right.
years. I played, I think, 97 to 98, 98 to 99. So I
Mhm.
played a couple of years, and we were on the same
Right.
team for those 2 years, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you play? Like, did you play all four? Refresh my memory.
Yeah, I so my whole thing was, obviously my passion was getting into medical school and the whole that part of me was a huge part of my life. But basketball was the other part, was my other major love. And what I had actually gone into college hoping for was to actually walk on to the varsity team, a real team,
Mhm.
and I did. I actually, I don't know if you knew this. I actually walked on and I made the team. They said, okay, you made it. They gave me practice jersey and stuff. But what happened though is, as this was going on, I was kind of realizing how much work it would take to get the grades that I wanted to. So a few days into it, I was like, I don't know, I can't do both. I can't. I'm already not sleeping. How can I sleep and practice? So it just became a thing where I had to choose one. So I remember this like it was yesterday. I went to the coach's office, Senderoff, Rob Senderoff, if you remember him,
Sure.
and I said, I think it's better for me to maybe just play JV. He was like, that's a great idea, and he was a JV coach, if you remember,
Mhm.
and that kind of became my outlet, I would say, for those next 4 years, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved the guys. I loved the team. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. Congratulations. I didn't know you made the team as a
I
walk-on.
did. Yeah, that's a little known fact. Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's Division I and
Yeah.
Atlantic 10 conference at the time,
Right.
even, right?
Right.
And
Right.
no,
Right.
good for you, man. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I remember when we played together, again, filling some blanks for me. It was a long time ago, and I did one of those things you're not supposed to do in college, but not to sleep well. I did drink sometimes in college, so I know that's a no-no for sleep. I learned that earlier in this episode. But so
Right.
memory is sometimes a little hazy from college days, but. I remember you worked the baseline pretty hard. I feel like you were a rebounder a lot. I remember you being on the baseline a lot, and then in the low blocks, you're a big rebounder. I remember you being on the floor a lot. You would dive for loose balls. That was you would dive in for loose balls, getting rebounds, working the baseline, hitting some baseline. But that was kind of your game. You were very grit, like you were a workhorse kind of down low, even though you're not
Yeah.
7 feet tall. How
Yeah.
tall are you? You're probably
I'm about 6'2", 6'2"
six
about.
two and a half. But
Yeah.
that's where I remember you being. And Dan's going to be on the rebounding, on the floor, on the baseline, maybe sticking a couple baseline jump shots on the first.
Right.
Was like taking a charge. But was that do I remember that the right way? That's
That's it. And I kind of approached basketball the way I approached studying and everything else in life, which is go full bore and damn the consequences. Yeah, that's kind of what I love to do. I've never been somebody to score a lot of points. It's just not doesn't interest me. Let other people do that. But I always like to, you know, dive on the floor, grab the rebounds, get rough and tumble down there. That's kind of that's why I like to play. That's why I always kind of fashion myself.
Yeah.
You were that way too, if I remember correctly.
I played hard.
Yeah.
like to think I left it all on the court, but
Yep. Yep. Yep.
sorry, some of my memories are on point. So
Yeah.
let's go down memory lane a bit
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the JV team, which I think
Mhm.
the claim to fame for JV, I think is Denzel Washington played on
That's right.
JV foreign
That's
basketball team.
correct. That's
And
correct.
PJ Carlissimo was a coach of a little known fact.
Mhm.
PJ Carlissimo coached the JV team.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I was similar to you. I tried out as a walk-on freshman year. The difference is I didn't make it. So was they suggested JV, and I decided to do that the following year and try out for the JV team. But it was an interesting
Mhm.
model, right? Because I feel like we played some other JV teams of colleges, but we played
That's
some
right.
like club teams. But then we played these
That's right.
like powerhouse prep schools. I remember coming in like these were like the Oak Hills of
Right.
the world, and they would
Right.
come in and they beat us by 50 to 70 points.
It was
And
crazy.
I'm remembering that they're filling some blanks for me. But we used to get and we would get
Yeah.
dunked on. I mean, they were playing alley oops on us. But
Right.
is that the way you remember too in terms
I
of how
mean,
we played? And
yeah.
good, good.
No, I was gonna say, we're 6'2" guys, 6'3" guys guarding 7 feet, prep school guys. I mean, what's gonna happen, But no, but the great thing about it was, and I think this kind of across the board. I mean, we all just played hard. We were all good guys, just trying to put on make a game of it, and whether we won or lost. I mean, it kind of was like everybody just gave their all, and I think it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way because I think
Yeah.
the rest of our teammates kind of were cut from the same cloth as us. We were just out
Sure.
there
Yeah.
playing, doing the best we
Yep.
could do, right? Given
Yep.
it, we made most of our wingspan and our talent or whatever we
Right.
had to.
That's
So I feel
right.
like the whole team kind of fit that mold, and it was unique
Definitely.
where we were. Like we would have sometimes we were like self-coached, right? Where
Yeah. Right. That's right.
other times we had like a coach from the varsity spend some
Right.
time with us, or
Right.
or they just it was kind of like an odd mix of coaches that we had or
Right.
self-coaches. But
Right.
what's a specific memory you have of a specific play or a specific team? Like what would a highlight or
Yeah. I think my fondest memories. One is they actually they wrote us up in I think it was the Ram.
Mhm.
Had a full page thing about us, which was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And that was nice, and that was cool. And I loved the practices. I loved it. I loved that we would all go at each other hard, and then afterwards we'd all laugh or whatever. But it was the practices were a joy for me.
Oh, interesting, interesting, and then also the Lombardi Center
Mhm.
for any fellow Fordham Rams here. The
Right.
Lombardi Center, I don't know I'm sure, hopefully, it's still called that, but that was like the rec area where I think you
Right.
spent a lot of time there too. It wasn't
Sure.
just
Oh
a
yeah.
JV
Oh yeah.
practice or games. It was that we would be down and just playing pickup
Right. Yeah.
for hours,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I guess that helps sleep when we play that hard. You probably slept after at some point. You have to sleep. Just I mean.
Oh, of course. Oh yeah. I'd pass out after
Right, it's
after all
game
this.
after game, but yeah, we
Yeah.
would kind of
Yeah.
live. That was a lot of fun playing down there too in
That
Lombardi
was that was
Center.
great. That was
Uh,
great. Yeah. I mean, those were great times. And it's funny. I mean, here we were not doing right, in terms of still pulling all nighters and stuff. At the same time, though, regular exercise probably was helping us, and
yeah,
offsetting a little bit of the
no, for
detriment.
sure,
So
for sure, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, and to your point about like the almost the professionalism of these Division I basketball teams, where if you decided to stay the court to do both, right, to be a student athlete, right, like these guys are like they're traveling all the time, they're practicing all the time.
it's
It's like a full-time job
it
plus,
is
and then to
it
be
is
a biologist. I mean, that's it's like a culture of like, and I'm now we're here 20, 25 years later, but even back then it was like a full
right.
like lifestyle, like
It
job
is,
almost to
yeah,
be. So to really be,
and yeah. I mean, and the way that I am, I probably could have half-assed, at least the studies and gotten by, but that's just I can't live that way. So for me to go full bore, it just would have been not tenable.
yeah,
For me.
sure. Oh, and congratulations. I didn't know that. That's awesome. It's a feather in your cap to make a D1 team and you played all 4 years, huh? JV, you played all four?
JV, that's right. Yep, all
All
four.
four.
Yeah, yeah.
At some point we should have some type of just for all former JV players, we should have some type of
That was
reunion
cool.
or
Yeah,
alumni
yeah,
game or
yeah.
something.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
We'd have to wear
Or
like
it does. Hey, Eric Bonich is one of my best friends. I mean, you remember him
Of
from the
course.
JV
Yeah, he
years,
played
right?
hard too.
Yeah,
I'm still in touch with
yeah,
Eugene too. So we could maybe I'll
yeah.
do something there,
That's
and
awesome. Yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
like RoboCop City. We'll have knee braces
Tim
on,
Colby.
ankle braces,
Yeah.
elbow braces. We'll go nice and
Right.
slow. So,
That's right.
but but knowing us, we'll probably
Yeah,
all play hard. But dude,
yeah,
I want to
that's right.
so I want to talk about the books. Right? I don't know much about the books. Tell me about
Sure,
your books. I would love to learn about that.
sure. Yeah, great. So the first one is Let's Talk About Sleep, and that was published in 2018 from Rowman and Littlefield. Me and my co-author, who I ended up just kind of coming in contact with, I feel like if you put yourself out there,
Mhm.
the universe, God, we keep saying, kind of sets you on the right path, right? So I
Mhm.
had the idea of writing a book. I just something I always wanted to do.
Mhm.
And as my career was going on, I'd write little things here and there, just talking like kind of what we are now, but
Mhm.
like on paper.
Mhm.
And one day, seeing a patient, and he tells me, he says, Dr. Barone, you should write a book. I said, it's funny you say that. I have all these pages of things that I've just. He's
Mhm.
like, well, let me put you in touch with my friend who's an author. He's worked with doctors before, and his name is Larry Armour. So the three of us met up. We had a nice discussion, whatever, and it was like, all right, let's try to do this. So what ended up happening was me and Larry would meet. We would kind of have a discussion similar to you and I right now. He
Mhm.
would transcribe it, and then we put it to paper. Okay, so it was my thoughts, and he would help me to kind of like hone it in and make it palatable.
Mhm.
And we did that process over the course of 6 months to probably a year.
Mhm.
And after it was done, we were very happy, and we shopped around, and he knew people in the business. We
Mhm.
found an agent, and then she got us into different publishing houses, and we got a deal from Roman and Littlefields, and we got it published. It was really a thrill for me.
Okay.
So then that was out there, and the Korean version got published over my shoulder here.
Mhm.
And then a few years later, we had another discussion. Say, hey, let's bring the band back together again and try this out. Let's we have a lot of stuff left over from the first book. Can we
Mhm.
put that into a second book and expand upon it? And
Mhm.
that's where the story of sleep from A to ZZZ came from.
Okay.
Let's Talk About Sleep, I think, is probably the better of the two books in
Mhm.
that it's, you can pick it up, you can read patients' journeys of mine. I interviewed patients of mine, and we kind of had kind of telling their story, and then I would kind of interject. So if you have a sleep disorder, you can read it and say, oh, that's kind of my journey too, and,
Mhm.
kind of understand what happened. The story of sleep, it's also, I'm very proud of, that's more of a definition book, though. That's
Mhm.
a book where it's like, I heard about insomnia, I heard about circadian rhythms, I heard about narcolepsy. What are these conditions? You can pick it up and just read about it, and there's kind of small bite-sized entries, and then, oh, okay, narcolepsy, that's really interesting. But it says here there's a term, medication. Okay, so let me go read about that medication. You can kind of find yourself really, self-teaching
Mhm.
from the second book.
Mhm.
So those are the two, both from Roman and Littlefield, both on Amazon, if you're interested.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And I was going to ask about is there like, does either book have like a really kind of technical chapter? Because earlier you said it could help to fall asleep. You can read a book that's very technical. Take a
Right.
look here. So maybe your book could be
Yeah.
multi-purpose. It's very
Yeah.
informative, very
Right.
interesting. But hey, like
Right.
if I'm going to read this technical, this part's going to put me to sleep.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
Kramer with the coffee table book about coffee
Right.
tables, right?
Yeah.
So
Right. That's right.
it's a sleep
It,
about
it
sleep.
comes with the coffee too.
So this
Yeah.
was an amazing book, but also
Right.
there's a
So
chapter helping you fall asleep.
right.
It's
Right.
super
Well,
technical.
it's funny actually. When I would give the book to people, like whoever I would write in the thing, I would say, I hope this book's helping you sleep without putting you to sleep.
Well, maybe it does both.
Yeah.
Maybe it does
Yeah,
both.
right.
So,
That's both. Exactly right.
so when this has
Uh,
always been an interesting topic to me because I'm also like kind of like you. I try to pride myself in working hard and doing
sure.
putting the
Yeah,
most
I'm
into a
there.
day. And sometimes you're doing that, and it's like, well, I want to do more, therefore I'll sleep less, right? And it's this sometimes this concept, which is I think probably not unhelpful, which is that oh, I'll cut into my sleep and therefore I'll be more productive, but it ends up kind of being the opposite, right? Because the next day I'm not at optimal, and like
Yeah,
I do feel like, and you and I spoke a little about this, like sometimes I feel like a different person almost when I'm on a really good night of sleep, and
sure.
I'm sure that's
Yeah,
not the first time you heard that, but it's like,
sure. Yeah,
shoot, like it's like I feel like a different
yeah,
person. I'll get 8, 9 good hours, forget about it.
right. And that's what kind of drove me to the field is that, as neurologists, the general neurologists, we, this things we can't do with a lot of stuff, whereas sleep disorders, it can make a huge difference. If somebody wakes up, on most nights and feels good, that's a super rewarding, situation.
Mhm.
But just I just want to comment on something. If there is a night, let's say you're somebody who's rock solid, right? You exercise every day, you do good sleep habits, good. The brain is designed every now and then. You can stay up late and work. You can, forego sleep. That's okay. The problem becomes when all these things are every single night. That's what we don't want, So I don't want people to, get oh, I have to go to bed. If you have to stay up, and you do things right,
Mhm.
it's okay. Evolution, going back to evolution, has provided that for us. We are able to do that. Like if you have to take care of your kids, or you have to, that's all right. What we're looking at is kind of the day-to-day chronic stuff.
Okay. What do you say to somebody like me who I can't fall asleep because I'm thinking about things, right? I'm trying to
Right.
solve problems or plan
Right.
ahead, or I'm just straight up just like not necessarily mind racing, but just kind of thinking,
Sure.
can't
That's very common.
turn that off, right? So earlier you said like a meditation, for example, right? But
Right.
I am one of those guys. I never used to be this way, but now I go for my phone now, right? I'll check
Right.
emails on my phone or I'll scroll on a news website. So what is something you say to me, who's the guy that just can't shut his brain down sometimes,
Right.
or who does resort to this phone, be like, oh, I'll screw around my phone a little bit and
Right.
that'll help me fall asleep,
Yeah.
which just sounds like it's the opposite with the blue
Right.
light, is it called?
Blue
So
light. That's right.
what
Yeah.
do you say to somebody like me who's just kind of like just
Yeah.
thinking and can't shut it down?
Well, I'd say you're not alone. I mean, it's you and millions, maybe billions of other people have that same issue.
Mhm.
I think it's important. Like I said, I can't stress this enough. No screens, but it doesn't mean you can't listen to a podcast. You can't listen to the news. You can't listen to a book on tape or whatever. All that stuff is great, and it might be just an easy thing of just okay. I'm not going to use a screen, but I will do these other things,
Mhm.
and just that simple change might be able to help you along.
I like that idea a lot, like a book on like an audio book, even if it's on
Sure.
my
Yeah.
phone, but I
Yeah.
don't have the phone in front of my eyes. I have it
Right. Right.
a few feet away, and the book puts
Right.
me to sleep. The
Yeah.
audio book, even because those can I can see that being effective.
Definitely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know we have to wrap up in a few, but I have a question about like we'll call it like one of your success stories where somebody came in and it was like really bad, whether it was insomnia, whether it was sleep apnea, where you kind of had this journey with them where it was like really rough shape when they came in. I'm sure you've had a
Right.
lot of these, but I'm
Yeah.
just looking for like an example of like from start to finish and how it changed their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably one of my most satisfying cases, let's say, that I can think of was actually a fellow physician, a doctor who worked at my hospital. And without I don't want to go into details, but basically he was in really really bad shape. I mean, he was falling asleep in meetings and stuff, and kind of was doctors have a huge egos, myself included, and at times, and it kind of didn't buy into what I was saying. We should do a sleep test. We should really find out about what's going on here. No, I don't think so. Blah, blah, blah. Turns out this guy had really, really, really severe sleep apnea.
Mhm.
Treated him with a certain device,
Mhm.
and not only did his sleep apnea go away,
Mhm.
his insomnia got better, and he was a different guy.
Mhm.
And whenever I saw him from that point forward, on the street or whatever, he'd give me a hug and say thank you again. And
Mhm.
it was cool because I mean that kind of story is not uncommon with what we do, but it was kind of cool to see a fellow doctor who thought he knew everything, and turns out we actually he had something to learn, and by doing so and following my advice he actually got so much better, and that was really cool. That was cool.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
incredible. So yes, two more quick things. I do icebreakers at the end of the interview for whatever reason. This is just the way it's
I
kind
like
of
that.
happened that way. This is
Yeah, I
the way
like
it's
that.
working. So we're going to do a couple
Yeah,
icebreakers. But
yeah.
and I do want to get contact information for you because I personally feel like it's a pretty
Sure.
big problem out there when people are on WebMD. I don't even know if
Oh,
they're
yeah.
around
Oh,
anymore, but I used to go on WebMD and freak myself out over stuff. Or even now, people
right,
they type in something to AI and they think whatever it gets back is the truth, no matter
right,
what. Like,
right,
you strike me as a
right,
real expert who like, truly wants to help people and has deep knowledge in this and has the human element where you also sit with them rather than somebody plugging around their keyboard, freaking themselves
right.
out or self-diagnosing. So I would want to get as many details as I can for you contact wise.
Sure.
But let's do and this is going to go up on YouTube and Spotify and Apple for anybody that wants to listen to
Right.
it there too. So, but we're going to let's do some. I'm going to think on the fly here about some icebreaker questions. I have some go-tos, but like, who's your favorite basketball player of all time? Let's go down to basketball. Who's your favorite?
Yeah, it's got to be Mike. I mean, I mean, not only for how good he was,
Mm,
but just how he approached the game.
mhm,
Which is, I'm going to work harder than everybody. I'm here to win,
mhm.
and that I think to me is kind of what it's all about.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going down some a little bit of a YouTube rabbit hole recently, watching some Jordan stuff and seeing the way that other
Mhm.
players speak
Yeah.
about him. Like even like I think it was like the top
Sure.
75 NBA players of all time. They had like a 75th anniversary
Mhm.
get together of so
Right.
everybody was there, Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah. And
Right.
of those 75, like people are so deferential to him as being the best. When you have like the best of
Sure.
all time, even like he was, of course, he was, let's talk about egos. He was the last one apparently to come to the event. Like he showed up a little bit late,
Right.
and there was
Right.
like a little bit of quiet, like, oh, Jordan's here. So
Right.
among
Right.
that level of greatness, to have that reverence from like other
Sure.
all-time greats to me is very
And,
powerful, right? And,
and I think to him, probably, the whole idea about him being the highest jumper and
mhm,
the craziest athlete, probably all that stuff doesn't mean much to him.
mhm.
It's the winning and the respect from his colleagues. I bet you that's kind of what matters most to him.
It seems to be the
Yeah.
story on him. He did like
Yeah.
to win, and he's as
Right.
competitive as
Right.
it
Right.
gets.
Right. Right.
And yeah, yeah, you hear stories about his competitiveness, but then you also,
Right.
but also when I was kind of enjoying professional sports, other sports, when a championship is won, and like when like the player just really like just starts crying, right? When Jordan would like he would just lose,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and that was part of it had to do with his father's passing or whatever, but other elements like
Yeah.
where it's just like it matters that much to them, right? Those
Yeah.
tears of joy to win a championship and everything that goes into that, because all these other professionals are
Right.
striving for that too, but only one can have it. So
That's
that
right.
the
That's right.
competitive energy of Jordan. Okay, so Jordan is all right. So but yeah, all right, I'm gonna chat. Give me number two, second favorite basketball. So give me a second
Uh,
favorite player of all time.
that's easy. Larry Bird is my second
Okay,
favorite.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, for the same reasons. It's it matters so much to these guys. And I think winning. I mean, and I think anytime you have anybody in any field who's passionate about something and really gives it their all, that transcends. Okay, I could not be into the sport at all, but just knowing that person is
Mhm.
and gives everything they can to it, that's something I think across all barriers of life, I think is a very human thing to appreciate and say, okay,
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah. Birds, some of my favorite story, and Jordan has the same thing, which I guess goes to competitive nature, was the trash talking they would do. And I guess they looked for every edge they can get. I kind of enjoyed
Yes,
the Bird
that's
stories where he would
right.
tell people, "I'm going to come down. I'm going to be on the wing. I'm going to catch a pass. I'm going to head fake, and then I'm going to shoot it right in your eyes." And he would tell them what he was
Shoot
going to
right into
do,
it.
and then do
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
completely
All right.
demoralized them. Like these
Didn't
competitive
stop it.
people look
Yeah,
for every edge
yeah,
they can get, right? So,
right.
so, so another icebreaker. Where's a place you would like to travel to that you haven't traveled to before? That's kind of on your top of your to-do list of a place to go.
Yeah, my favorite was Sicily that I've been to, and
Mhm.
my family is Sicilian in origin, so that was really cool. But as far as where I'd like to go, Japan probably. Japan and Ireland are my two favorite, my two next
Okay.
places.
Okay. What's the main reason? What's like the
Well, Ireland, I think is just beautiful, and I think it's a lot of my best friends are Irish, so it's kind of I feel like I'm a honorary Irishman. Uh,
Okay.
and then Japan, I just I think it looks very very interesting. You
Okay.
know, the technologies they have over there. I'm a big gamer, so seeing that kind of stuff would be cool for
Okay.
me.
All right. All
I'll have
right.
to wait till my son's old to take him. Yeah.
Okay. And with a one more
Yeah.
question icebreaker, post icebreaker, which will be if you had a chance to go back to any point in history and have dinner with a historical figure, who would that person be that you would have dinner with? It's
Jesus,
okay. Okay.
Jesus, or John the Baptist, one of
Okay.
those two.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Okay. Great
yeah.
stuff. I really enjoyed this. This was a great conversation. I learned a ton,
It's
and
awesome. Yeah, yeah,
and always fun talking some Fordham b-ball and
yeah, yeah,
reminiscing a
yeah.
bit. But super informative. I can only imagine if we were, if we just, if you come back or if we do go longer. If there's
Sure. Yeah,
so much to cover, and it's going to help people
definitely.
apply. Because I do feel like societally, I mean, now with all the speed of technology, right?
Right,
Just the prevalence and just be able to. I think it's an issue. I think just in society, but I know I have a tough time shutting down, man. I have a tough time shutting down.
sure,
I think
sure.
I've really,
Yeah.
if I get 7 to 9 hours of good sleep a night, like you said, including the timing of it, right? The timing of it, I think that's important too, right? Like you said,
Right,
it's the quality kind of the time. I think that'd be a difference maker for me. So I'm going to apply some of these hacks right away.
right,
And
right.
the audio book, I like that one. The audio book on my device. So I'll keep the phone
Yeah,
off
give
to
it a
the
shot.
side. Yeah,
Yeah.
keep it shot.
I what I always tell people is this. Look, I mean, the changes to make, as long as it doesn't hurt you and it may help, it's worth giving it a shot. I mean, weighted blankets, or blackout shades, or audiobook like we talked about. There's no risk with these things, and if they help you even a little bit, it's worth giving it a shot.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
recently got the blackout shades too, so that's
good,
gonna help. Good
good.
stuff. Good stuff. All right, so let's go through. We'll go through it slowly too, because we want to make sure people can reach out to you. So let's go through all the contact information. Not, for obviously to purchase your book, but also what if they want to contact you because you're in the New York
Sure.
area for
Right,
you practice in the New York area. So
I
what if
do.
they just want to go ahead and like reach out and book an
Right,
appointment and see you for a consultation? So like, you give me
sure.
everything in terms of how people
Yeah.
the best way for them to reach you.
Probably the best way is just if you look online, Montefiore Medical Center,
Hmm.
the sleep disorder center. You can
Hmm.
just look my name up, and you can see the phone number and all the information on how to reach out there. That's probably the best way to see me clinically.
Okay.
As far as my books, like I said, the story of sleep
Hmm.
from A to ZZZ, and let's talk about sleep.
Hmm.
Both of those are on Amazon.com.
Okay.
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name. I'm on Instagram, although I don't really use that much for clinical stuff. But Daniel Barone, MD.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. So Daniel, because we have so Daniel Barone is spelled Daniel traditionally Daniel, Barone
Mhm.
Barone, and then
Barone. Barone.
Barone, right? And then you're on LinkedIn, yeah. You're on
Mhm.
LinkedIn as well as what other social media are you on? If are you on
Like I
Facebook?
said, Instagram. I'm on.
Instagram?
Facebook is my personal, and then I think that's Facebook, LinkedIn. Um, yeah, those are pretty much the
Okay.
main ones,
And
and then
Montefiore
Instagram.
is Montefiore, right?
Or that's right.
All
Yeah.
right. And they're
Yeah.
around tri-state, right? It's not just one location. If I'm not mistaken, it's around tri-state area. It's just not just one
They
location.
are, yeah, but it's kind of located in the Bronx.
Okay.
We do telehealth visits, so that could be depending on the person's insurance. That could be something to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
This is awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed it. Learned a ton.
My pleasure.
Fun reminiscing and talking basketball. And the so Jordan's definitely top of the list, huh?
That's the
Top
guy. Yeah,
of the
yeah,
list.
yeah.
It doesn't surprise
And
me. Yeah.
yeah, I just want to say, not to cut you off. I just want to say this is awesome, man. I'm glad you're doing this. I think you're a natural at it. I think that this is definitely something you want to continue on doing. So congratulations on this podcast. Very proud of you, man. And I expect to see good things, really good things down the road.
Appreciate that very much, especially coming from you with the work ethic that you have and the drive that you have and the success you've had and the intellect. So that means a lot to me. And I'll keep at it.
Great job.
All right, Daniel. All right, man. It's
All
been a
right.
pleasure. And
My pleasure, my friend. Take care and sleep well. Okay.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay.